This is my interview with Sean DeGrilla, the author of Malcontent. This is one of 3 books he's planning on writing about the subject of Harvey Oswald and the JFK assassination. Please see the description. You'll find in there a link to Sean's website. Also, there's a link for Fair Play for JFK. That's our Facebook group that we talk about. And the third one is a link to friends who like Jim Leavelle. Here's the interview. Hi, is this Sean DeGrilla?
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for taking my phone call.
Thank
Sean, first I want to say thanks for sending me your book. And the
Absolutely.
book is called Malcontent, Harvey Oswald Confession by Conduct.
That's it.
And how do you spell your last name?
It's DEGRILLA.
Oh, okay. And Sean, do you have a website or anything?
I do. It's SeanDeGrilla.com, and on that website you'll see most of the charts and the photographs from my book. You can find them there.
Okay. Sean, I have a YouTube channel called Dave, the Insurance Guy. And on my channel, I have lots of JFK stuff. So I was thinking, if it's okay with you, I wouldn't mind putting a video up about your book and plus what we talk about today. Is that okay?
I'd be honored. Yes, that's perfect.
Oh, okay. And also, if my subscribers were interested in purchasing your book, where would they go to find it?
If your subscribers want to email me at SeanDeGrilla.com, there's a link. They can send me a message, and I can get them an autograph book cheaper than they can get it on Amazon.
Oh, super. All right, that's good to hear. Sean, how long did it take you to write the book?
It was a year from start to finish, and while I was writing the book, I was finishing my degree in history, so it was quite a busy year last year.
All right. Okay. Well, first, what got you interested in the subject?
Well, I grew up in Dallas, moved to Orlando area when I was 20. So living in Dallas, of course, it was big news back then, especially in the 80s and early 90s. And I met witnesses, authors, and just got bit by the bug. I'm sure you know what that feels like. And I told myself that one day I would write a book. And my first of 3 planned books was published this year.
Oh, cool. So you grew up in Dallas?
I did.
So you probably weren't alive on November 22nd, 1963.
No, I was. I was born 10 years afterwards. But I'm telling you, it's just, once you get bit by that bug, and once you're in Dealey Plaza and you talk to people and you see everything, you experience what they have down there, and you just can't walk away from it.
So how old were you when you first got interested in the subject?
In 1983, when I was 10, I moved from Southern California to Dallas.
Okay.
And we were having dinner at the restaurant on top of the Reunion Tower. And my dad pointed down he pointed down Dealey Plaza and goes, "That's where President Kennedy was shot." I'm like, "Who? What happened?" And he goes, "Yeah, some people think it was a guy from a building, and some people think it was a guy from behind a fence." And right then and there, I had to know everything there was about the subject.
But don't most 10-year-olds would rather go to Six Flags out there than go to Dealey Plaza?
Yeah, Dave, you're absolutely right. I was unlike most preteens at that time, and people are going to parties and they're going with their buddies and that kind of thing, and not me. I'm holding a book, walking around Dealey Plaza, talking to witnesses and that kind of thing. So yeah, quite an interesting childhood.
That's interesting. You may have just tested positive for being a geek.
That's a moniker well deserved.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
You mentioned that you've met some witnesses. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I did volunteer work at the JFK Assassination Information Center with Larry Howard. I met witnesses such as Ed Hoffman, and of course I could not communicate with him because Ed Hoffman is deaf. So he would write down to me. He would read my lips, and he'd write down his answers to me on a piece of paper. And that, to me, was one of the first witnesses that I met, and I just got really intrigued by the whole thing. I met Harrison Livingstone, Robert Groden, of course, and other authors, and John Davis. So I just got immersed in that scene down there at that time.
Well, I think in your book there's some pictures with Penn Jones.
Yes, and Penn Jones. Penn, that's a great point. Penn, I wrote to him. I first found Cover Up by J. Gary Shaw at the Dallas Trade Mart, one of the gun shows they had back then. So on the back of Cover Up, there was an advertisement for, I believe, volumes 1 through 4, Forgive My Grief. So I wrote to Penn. He only had volume 3 left. He gave that to me. And we would write on a continual basis back and forth. And he would supply me pictures, copies of the continuing inquiry that he wrote, newspaper articles, magazines. And at 10, 11, 12 years old, I had this very patriotic researcher taking a very keen personal interest in me. And I never forgot that.
Yeah, that's good. Talking with Sean DeGrilla. The name of the book is called Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. And once again, you can find it on Amazon.com. And Sean, what's your website again?
It's SeanDeGrilla.com.
And that's Degrilla is how you spell his last name. Sean, everybody you've mentioned so far that I know about them, Larry Howard, Penn Jones, I don't know, did you say John Davis?
I did, yes.
Okay, I don't know him. But aren't those individuals that lean more towards there's a conspiracy, which is a complete opposite of your book after I've read it?
That's right. And, of course, back then I'm very impressionable. I really didn't learn to think from...
Where did you go wrong?
Nice question. When I was young, I was impressionable, of course, like we all are. Hadn't really thought for myself yet. But once I moved away from Dallas and I joined the police academy in the late 90s, I began to think for myself. I'm like, I don't really understand how, such a massive conspiracy. So after I moved from Dallas to Orlando and joined the police academy in the late 90s, I began to think for myself. And it didn't make any sense to me that such a massive conspiracy as the one to kill President Kennedy has never existed before or since the assassination. It didn't make sense to me that all the police officers, media, witnesses, doctors, lawyers, politicians, all these people were leading seamlessly normal lives, and all of a sudden they would lie about this and put their reputations and livelihoods on hold. I don't think that happened. It doesn't make any sense. You're not living in reality when something that big it never happened.
Well, I think that's quite unusual, isn't it? Because your influence when you're younger. And did you have any contacts with those who lean towards that there's a single gunman?
No.
They're all...
In fact, they're all conspiracy folks. And if that's what they want to believe, that's fine. I'm not downgrading them. If they want to believe that, that's on them. But as a cop, as a former law enforcement officer, I dealt with criminals on a daily basis. So I went back and I said, what was the behavior of Lee Harvey Oswald? Because people forget about him. A lot of times, he's a footnote when some books deal with the Zapruder film or the backyard photographs or any of that kind of nonsense. But they don't get back to Oswald. So I started to analyze his behavior from a law enforcement perspective, and when I saw that, it just screamed guilt. There's no other way to interpret that.
Okay. Well, in your book, you talk about, I believe it's Detective Barnes.
Right.
There are no nitrates on Oswald's face. What do you say to those that bring up that point?
Well, first of all, without sounding too rude, people have to get educated. They have to go back to the primary sources. I have a complete set of the 26 volumes, the original set, but you can get those on CD for a couple bucks. So there's no excuse now not to get educated. If they were to read the 26 volumes, they would know that Pete Barnes said, yeah, I would expect to find any nitrates on Oswald's cheek because the gunpowder residue has already gone down the barrel of the gun and been expelled away from him. So there's nothing unusual about that. So I find it absolutely consistent with him firing a rifle.
But there were nitrates on his hands?
Correct. Well, he also fired a pistol shortly thereafter. So.
That's right.
Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah. So, and the veracity of that test, it's an investigative tool, just like the computer voice stress analysis I did on Oswald. It's an investigative tool. So that's all the paraffin tests are. There's nothing suspicious about it because he testified to the Warren Commission for 55 years that the nitrates from the rifle will go down the barrel of the rifle and will be expelled away from the shooter. Therefore, no nitrates on the cheek.
Okay. So the nitrates found on the hands is quite possibly from the events that happened right after that?
My personal opinion is it's on Oswald's hands is from the shooting of Officer Tippit.
So Oswald shot a police officer the same day?
After he killed Officer Tippit approximately 45 minutes after he shot President Kennedy.
And was this downtown Dallas too?
It was less than a mile away from his rooming house where Oswald lived.
Now what part of Dallas was this?
That's Oak Cliff. So if you begin to connect the dots, even I write my book, there had not been an officer killed in Dallas, feloniously killed in Dallas for 10 years. Prior to Tippit, there were two. One was shot while undercover, and the suspect was no bail, which means he wasn't prosecuted. And one officer was killed, was T-boned by a fire truck while the police officer was pursuing a vehicle. So no officer had been shot and killed feloniously in Dallas since Tippit. So now all of a sudden you have President Kennedy shot 45 minutes later, and 3 miles away, you have a police officer shot and killed. That stuff just did not happen back then. Unfortunately, in contemporary times, it's much more common. But back then, it wasn't. So now you have all these events erupting in Dallas. There's no doubt they're connected.
Speaking with Sean DeGrilla, the name of the book is Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald Confession by Conduct. Again, you can find it on Amazon.com or Sean DeGrilla. What's the rest of it? Sean DeGrilla?
SeanDeGrilla.com.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable in giving an email address for questions?
Absolutely. Sean DeGrilla at gmail.com.
Again, that's DeGrilla. But Sean, when I was reading your book, I've learned several new things. I've studied the assassination 30 years, but you always learn something new. One thing I've learned after reading your book is that Friday morning, the 22nd, Oswald didn't do much work. In fact, his clipboard was empty, and because he had his mind on some other things. Is that correct?
That's correct. Roy Truly, in his Warren Commission testimony, said Oswald did a good day's work. He was better than average. On the day of the assassination, he hadn't completed a single order. Now, Vincent Bugliosi, in his book Reclaiming History, said that Oswald processed one order. But when they found the clipboard was empty. And in fact, it was hidden behind some boxes about 20 feet from where the rifle was found, and was found on December 2nd, and not a single order had been filled on that clipboard.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
So what did he do after he shot President Kennedy? What were his movements?
Well, I think he was incredulous that he's able to do it. I've done presidential details before with Bush and Obama, and most people are under the impression that we search everybody as they go into the buildings along the motorcade routes, that kind of stuff, but that doesn't happen. So I think he was incredulous that he was able to walk into the book depository unfettered, and to actually carry out the assassination without being spotted. And he was spotted, but no one reported him, or being shot in the process. And I think he was making it up as he went along.
And wasn't he one of the only employees that left the work site?
That's correct. Now, there was one worker that left, went up Houston Street for about 15 minutes, but he returned. Oswald was the only book depository employee who did not stick around to give a written or verbal statement to law enforcement because he had to get away from the scene. When I talk about consciousness of guilt in my book, those are actions that a guilty person portrays which can infer their guilt. For example, fleeing the scene, changing your name, changing your appearance, killing police officers, selective answering of questions. Like, I'll tell you about my time in Russia, but I won't tell you where I was yesterday. That kind of thing. So everything he did after the assassination just screamed consciousness of guilt. Would you throw your hands up in the theater and pull a pistol on arresting officers? No. An innocent person would not do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, when he got in the cab with, was it William Whaley?
That's correct.
Okay. I believe there were sirens going on and everything else, and Whaley's all looking around and rubbernecking. What is that noise? What's the uproar? And I think in your book you point out that Oswald had no comment, could care less, never asked one question to the cab driver about what happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, what does that tell you? William Whaley was like, his exact quote was, "What the hell? What the hell is going on?" Oswald never said a word. In fact, Oswald taking a taxi, that's the only documented time that I'm aware of that Oswald took a taxi. He always took a bus when he had to get out of there, go home, arm himself. And in fact, when Whaley drove him home, Oswald had him take him to 500, Beckley, because he wanted to see if the police were waiting for him. It's not uncommon in my career. I've seen suspects return to the scene where they send their boyfriend or girlfriend back to the scene and drive past the scene to see what's going on or if we're looking for somebody. So no doubt he was having Whaley drive past the scene, making sure the police were there waiting for him already. He trotted back to his rooming house, changed his appearance, and armed himself.
And I believe the landlord was watching TV, and she had there's news about the assassination on every channel, and Oswald briskly comes in, grabs his coat and pistol, and doesn't even ask one question to the landlord lady.
Yeah, it's incredible. She's turning on the TV. The tubes are warming up. She can hear the TV, but she can't see it yet because the neighbors told her, "Hey, President Kennedy's been shot." So she's warming up the TV. She can hear it. He runs in. She goes, "Oh, you're in a hurry." Doesn't say a word, which is not unusual for Oswald. And he goes, he doesn't stop and say, "Oh, yeah, I was just there. It was crazy. Yeah, I'll tell you all about it." And he runs right by her. All but runs is what she said. And, he was on a coat. He arms himself. And he's back out the door within 3 minutes. And he's staying at the bus stop for the northbound Beckley bus. He can't stay there too long because every second he's at the bus stop is one more second the police have of finding him. He's got to go.
So that'd be confession by conduct, is what you're saying. Okay.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing, though, is his clenched fist salute. That I found verifiable photographic proof that Oswald gave a clenched fist salute to Detective Combest when Combest asked him for a final declaration. I don't see how you get any more hardcore than that. He had a wife. He had 2 babies at home. In your dying moments, and I'm pretty sure Oswald knew if he wasn't dying, he was close to it. And instead of saying, "I'm sorry, I love my kids," or "Daddy loves me, loves you," he just holds up his clenched fist salute and then loses consciousness. I think that's pretty hardcore. I think that goes to, what Oswald was thinking and how he was behaving and acting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your last intentional physical act on Earth is to give the clenched fist salute instead of saying goodbye to your loved ones, to your family. And what more can you say about that?
Yeah. What were some more of his signs of lying?
Oh, he would selective answer of questions. So he would talk to Detective Boyd about how life was in Russia, about the type of vehicles they have in Russia, but he wouldn't answer certain questions about Mexico City, or he would lie about where he was. He gave 3 different versions. One was he was on the first floor, one he was on the second floor. I found an interrogation note from Hosty that says he was on the outside watching the parade. So he he would lie about certain questions that were criminal in nature, but questions that had absolutely nothing to do, had no consequence to him, had no jeopardy to him. He would freely talk about it. But as soon as you talk about the assassination or anything related to the assassination, he either lied or he said nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also think as well, I'm sorry, Dave. I also think as well that when he asked for an attorney, he asked for John Apt. So, that's to me, if you get arrested for a crime, you want a good attorney. Back then, they had Melvin Belli, F. Lee Bailey, a lot of prominent attorneys. He asked for Apt, the premier attorney for the Communist Party of the United States. So when his brother Robert was in jail visiting Oswald, he goes, "I'll get you a lawyer here in Dallas." He goes, "No, I want this one." What can you infer when Oswald wanted an attorney that represented communists? What does that tell you?
Yeah, really. Very interesting. You mentioned you mentioned Robert's name. What a gentleman. I've met him a couple of times. A complete gentleman, the opposite of Lee Harvey Oswald.
I'm very jealous because I've never had the opportunity, and I regret that. But when I see him, he seems like a complete gentleman, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think he even said that Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy and acted alone with no help.
His brother knows. Robert knows his brother.
Yeah.
So did Marina. And in the beginning, Marina was saying the exact same thing. You have to understand. To understand the assassination, you have to understand who Lee Harvey Oswald was. And people get sidetracked by grassy knoll people and the Umbrella Man and trajectories. But if you go back to basics, primary source material, and study Lee Harvey Oswald and his behavior, nobody else acted that way after the assassination. There were some arrests, but nobody acted the way Lee Harvey Oswald did. Nobody else killed a police officer that day. So Oswald was arrested for a reason. And I set out to try to find out what those reasons were.
Mm-hmm. We're speaking with Sean DeGrilla, the author of Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. Again, you can get the book at Amazon.com. Sean, in your book, there's a chapter about his conduct when he was arrested in New Orleans as opposed to Dallas. There's a complete difference in conduct. Can you talk about that a little bit?
There is. So we all know that in August of '63, he was arrested in New Orleans for disturbing the peace. He voluntarily was arrested. He didn't fight the officers. He didn't curse them out. He didn't try to kill them. He was not armed. He voluntarily went with the officers. When he gets to jail, he declines to be bonded out. Not only that, he requests to be interviewed by an FBI agent. Now, I believe he wanted to see the FBI agent because I think Oswald wanted to find out what the FBI knew about him. Or if the FBI was still interested in Lee Harvey Oswald.
What did he do in New Orleans to get arrested?
Well, he was a revolutionary in his own mind. He was an armchair revolutionary. So as we know, Oswald was extremely pro-Castro, and Oswald infiltrated the anti-Castro movement in New Orleans, headed by Carlos Bringuier. So he walks into Bringuier's office, offers to help them, gives him Bringuier his Oswald's Marine Corps handbook, says, "I can help you with sabotage, training, that kind of thing." Bringuier is obviously very cautious and refuses his attempt. Later on, they see Oswald handing out pro-Castro leaflets wearing a placard that says "Viva Fidel." Of course, they became incensed. They eventually find him and confront Oswald. A scuffle ensues. The police are called, and they're arrested for disturbing the peace.
So it's kind of like he enjoyed the attention, and
that's exactly right.
And he did in Dallas as well. But in Dallas, he's very combative. In New Orleans, he, he
was facing a $10 fine. Disturbing the peace is a municipal misdemeanor. It's nothing. It got him the publicity he wanted. He got 2 radio interviews out of that, and those radio interviews I used to do his computer voice stress analysis as well. But then you have Dallas, and so he kills President Kennedy, probably for his ideological reasons, but now you killed a cop. So when you kill a cop, you're just a punk. There's no excuse for killing anybody. But, he struck down the leader of the free world. Now he's killing a cop. So I think after Tippit was killed, I believe that kind of changed things for Oswald, and now he was seen as just a punk instead of some political hero.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw this in because I wrote this down.
Okay.
But as I said, I learned lots of new things while I was
Mhm.
reading your book. One thing I learned, now please forgive me, but I did write this down, folks. Uh, there's a rectal exam search by a jail physician.
That's it.
I bet he loved that, and I just threw that out because I've never read that anywhere before. But it makes sense. That's usual and customary,
Well,
isn't it? Are you a retired deputy sheriff?
I am. So
Yeah.
nowadays, it might be different back then. I'm not sure of the procedures back then, but if you're arrested for a felony, you have a rectal exam search. That's just the way that one goes.
Yeah.
And of course, he was. But I've never seen that
Did they
documented
find the
before.
rifle?
They did.
No, I was
They found the rifle.
during the rectal exam. Did they find the rifle?
I see you're going there. Yeah. They.
Okay, and what's interesting and unique about your book, you talk about, you write about computer voice analysis.
Right.
I've never seen that before in my
Well,
studies, and I like how you put it together. Can you tell us about that?
sure. First of all, when I went for law enforcement employment, I took a computer voice stress analysis in 1998. And I answered all the questions truthfully, of course. The examiner said, okay, I want you to lie on this question. And the lady was wearing glasses. She goes, I'm going to ask you if I'm wearing glasses. I want you to tell me no. I want you to lie to me. I'm like, okay. So I lied. She goes, okay, you did great. I said, can I look at it? And she goes, yeah. And I knew nothing about the CVSA. I saw the Christmas tree light readouts of my truthful answers. And then I see there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry about that, Dave. And then I saw the Bush. So I took a CVSA for law enforcement employment, and I answered all the questions truthfully. And on the last question, she wanted me to lie, and so I did. I said, "Okay, can I see the results?" She goes, "Yeah." So I saw where all the Christmas tree light results was my truthful responses, and then the mountain light result was my lying to her. Totally uncontrollable by me. There's no known countermeasures for that, unlike the polygraph. So I was very interested in that. Fast forward, and I kept on seeing information about George O'Toole's The Assassination Tapes, which was George O'Toole used the psychological stress evaluator and ran some Oswald audio clips through it and determined Oswald was telling the truth.
What year is this?
That was 1975 when the book came out.
Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead.
So that's been the premier and only work on any sort of voice stress analysis. So I called a friend in the sheriff's office who instructed the sheriff's office in computer voice stress analysis, who has his own company, who works for the man that created the computer voice stress analysis in the 80s. His name is Jerry Crotty. I said, Jerry, I want to give you an audio clip from Lee Harvey Oswald that says, I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir. I want you to run that through the CVSA. Let me know what you come out with. I didn't tell him what I wanted to come out with. I didn't tell him what I was looking for. I just wanted him to do it. And when he came back, Oswald was absolutely being deceptive. So going forward,
So let me stop
Yeah,
you there just a second. I think a lot of us have seen the footage, the news footage where Oswald is saying, "I didn't shoot anybody, no sir." So you're saying that you've taken that line, that audio line or his language,
Mhm.
and you put it through you call it computer voice analysis. And are you saying that he's part of the sentence is a lie? You can prove.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Not only that, I had 9 audio clips from Dallas and 4 or 5 from New Orleans. Because in New Orleans is great because we know so much more about Lee Harvey Oswald's biography that we can tell when he's lying or not. We can prove that. So they asked him before. Let me go backtrack a little bit. In New Orleans, the radio interviewer asked him, "Hey, are you a Marxist?" He says, "Yes, I'm a Marxist." Yes came out, no deception indicated. Oswald was a Marxist. He studied Karl Marx. They all know that he read Marx when he was 15. So we knew that was right. In Dallas, during the press conference, they said, "Mr. Oswald, how'd you hurt your eye?" He leans forward and he goes, "A policeman hit me." Well, we know that's the truth. He was struck several times during his arrest. that came back no deception indicated. Another one where he was telling the truth and lying in the same sentence was when he was asked about legal representation. He goes, I have not been allowed legal representation for anything. And anything, the any in anything, was deceptive because we know he called Apt twice, didn't get an answer because Apt was on vacation. He called Ruth Payne twice to make sure she tried to attempt Apt, and his brother visited him and offered to give him a lawyer. Not only that, Nichols, who was the head of the Dallas Bar Association, visited Oswald in jail and asked him if his rights were being protected. So Oswald lied, was telling the truth and lied in the same breath. And it's very, very interesting how these results came out.
Okay, well, I don't want to give away the book. Let's move on. But, folks, there's much more in the book about the other statements that Oswald has said. And if you get Sean's book, you'll see if he's telling the truth or lying. We'll leave it at that. Want to move on a little bit. When I found in your book also, Sean, that you were able to get your hands on Michael Payne's manuscript.
Right.
Is that correct? Now tell us about that. How were you lucky enough to do that?
It is amazing what you get when you're nice to people. So I called Ruth Payne. I researched Ruth Payne, and in some of her interviews, her recent interviews, I say recent, probably 10 years ago at least, she said, hey, my phone number's in the book. They can look me up, and I don't mind people calling me and asking me these questions. And so I called her, and I left a message twice. After the second message, I didn't get a response, so I left her alone. I didn't want to bother her. About 3 weeks after my last message, her son, Chris Payne, calls me. He says, hey, your mom gave me your message, and you're interested in my father's manuscript. I said, yes, sir. Here's my project. Here's what I'm doing. He goes, okay, I'll email it to you. It was that simple.
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was great. So it's been hiding since 2013, I want to say.
My goodness.
I believe that's correct. I'll check it. So it's been out there for, more than 10 years. No one bothered, well, it's been 15 years, no one bothered to ask him for it. Or, so it's amazing, I do investigations as a cop, and you have to learn how to talk to people. You have to learn how to befriend people and be a generally good person. And usually, when that happens, you get people to cooperate with you. So that's how I got that manuscript. I was very excited about it.
Mm-hmm. And Ruth Payne is a genuinely nice person.
She is defamed and defiled on some of these JFK Facebook websites. It's absolutely disgusting because people who say that don't know her, have never met her. They read hearsay or third-party statements, but a genuinely nice person. And Chris Payne, her son, absolutely a very generous and kind person.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I've talked to Ruth a couple of times, and she does return phone calls. I don't want everybody calling her, but she's genuinely a nice individual. And it goes to show you, she took in Marina with a small child, expecting
Absolutely.
a second one any moment, took her within her home. And
right.
then conspiracy theorists says they try to convince us she's a CIA agent, which is really a crying shame, and it breaks my heart because she's a great person.
Well, Dave, I can tell you this. I don't bet money on this. That the people who say that the people that say that Ruth Payne was involved with the CIA, was a conspirator, witting or unwitting, have never met her, have never met Michael Payne, have never talked to any family members. So it all comes down to doing your own research. That's why I got Jim Leavelle's personal papers.
Yeah,
we'll
talk about that shortly. But I think Michael Payne died in 2013.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Around there, yeah.
Okay.
And I never met him. I didn't start this project till later. But if he's anything like his son, Michael Payne was a stand-up person.
Is that right?
Very, very intelligent.
Ruth and Michael never did reconcile, did they?
That's no. They and it happens. That's nothing. Unfortunately, it's nothing unusual.
With Michael Payne's manuscripts that you have in your book, and folks, again, we're talking Sean DeGrilla. The name of the book is Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. You can grab it at Amazon.com. And in the book, again, is Michael Payne's notes, his manuscript, folks, that Michael wrote out in 1963. There's some interesting information within this manuscript. Again, it's in the book. One thing is he met Oswald February 1963. So how did this come about?
They went over there for a party, and Michael, on one occasion, had a cold and couldn't meet Oswald. But he eventually met up with Oswald, and they had 3 or 4 deeply intellectual conversations. In fact, Michael Payne took them to SMU for a ACLU meeting, where Oswald gave his opinion about the anti-Catholic statements being made by the John Birch Society. It was just chance, very small, very, I'm going to say this. Dave, I'm trying to get my thoughts together on this one. Hold on. When Michael Payne met Oswald, it wasn't for very long. Only except when he took him to the to SMU for the ACLU conference or meeting. But the conversations that Michael Payne had with Oswald, the brief conversations he had with him, were explosive. In fact, one thing stuck out with me. Oswald said, "The only way you achieve things is through violence."
Well,
all you have to do is.
But Oswald had never done anything violent up until November 22nd.
Well, correct, but his mind was going there because he had ordered the rifle and the pistol before that. So he was getting ready to go. He was not doing that just for for giggles. He was arming himself. He was getting himself ready to do something big. Just so happened that Walker presented himself to Oswald. He was already headed in that direction.
Did Ruth like Oswald? Ruth Payne?
No, she thought Oswald was very standoffish, was rude, and did not have a very favorable impression of Oswald.
I believe Michael Payne ended up visiting Oswald at his Neely Street apartment.
He did?
And Oswald showed him one interesting picture, didn't he? Can you talk about that?
He did. He showed him the backyard photograph. Oswald, Payne got the impression that Oswald was very proud of himself, which he was. I mean, look at this picture. Oswald is dressed all in black, head to toe. He's holding a rifle in one hand. He has communist literature in the other hand, and he has a pistol on his hip. He's becoming radicalized. In fact, that's what my second book is going to be. I'm researching it now, is the radicalization of Lee Harvey Oswald. Because if you look at shootings that occur in contemporary times, they always pose on Facebook or whatever with dressed in their ideology, symbols of their ideology, showcasing their firearms. Unfortunately, Oswald was ahead of his time. That's exactly what he was doing. So, and this didn't occur very often back in the 60s, especially 63, early 60s. So Michael Payne was taken aback by it, more so that Oswald was very proud of that image, that pose.
Yeah, and this is the backyard photos that conspiracy theorists say are faked and the shadows don't match up. And incidentally, when was it Captain Fritz that presented Oswald with a photo, and he told the captain that that's my face superimposed on another photo or something?
Right. Oswald says several different things about it, but you have to get educated. The people who say that do not know what they're talking about. Marina Oswald testified, yes, I took those pictures. Marguerite Oswald testified she had those pictures, and in fact, Marguerite, along with Marina, burned a picture of Oswald holding a rifle above his head with both hands, a pose we have never seen before. So his mother and his wife both confirmed, yes, these are pictures. In fact, Marina smuggled them in to the Oswald jail visit in her shoe, folded up in her shoe. And not to mention the fact that a 2015 study absolutely shows, and the HSCA absolutely confirms, these are real pictures. George de Mohrenschildt had a copy of his. found in 1967 his belongings upon his return from Haiti.
Now tell us who George is.
He was a Russian-born friend of Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a geologist, and basically, he was Oswald's only close friend, even though he only really knew Oswald for several months.
Okay. Okay, and I believe Oswald and Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina went to dinner over at the Payne's house in Irving, Texas.
Right.
And they started talking about one interesting character who lives on Turtle Creek in Dallas. Can you tell us about?
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, General Walker.
Yeah.
Absolutely. General Walker was, as you know, was a very polarizing political figure in Dallas. Oswald likened him to Hitler. And just like George de Morshill made a comment at a party one day that someone, or Volkmar Schmidt made a comment to Oswald at a party that someone should do something about Walker, offhand remark. Oswald was vehemently anti-Walker, thought that if someone had killed Hitler, look at all the lives that would be saved. Here was someone that was just several miles away from Oswald, and Oswald thought he can do real good by assassinating General Walker, by eliminating this threat to humanity as Oswald saw him.
Well, in your book, you talk about where Michael brings up Lee about Walker, and Oswald just simply smiled awkwardly. And was it 7 or 8 days later? What did he do, Sean?
Correct.
What did he try to do?
That's a good point. I mean, he smiled, and one thing we talk about is the totality of the circumstances. So it's not just one thing. It's not Oswald's smirk or smile, because he did that a lot. It wasn't his non-denial, but it's the totality of the circumstances. You add everything together, everything he said, everything he did, and that brings you to his guilt. I mean, you have all these people saying essentially the same thing, and there's no other. The conclusion is inescapable. That Oswald was violent. In today's world, he would be considered a terrorist, no doubt about it. So he was practicing his own version of urban guerrilla warfare, and that's how he fancied himself. Michael Payne saw that. De Mohrenschildt had an idea. Was putting that together. So yeah, he was a terrorist. There's no doubt about it.
What did he try to do with Walker? April of '63.
Correct. He took a shot at General Walker. What he did was he reconned the area. So before the assassination, he took pictures of the alley, of Walker's house, of the window he wanted to shoot at him. He took him to the railroad bridge, where he probably hid his rifle for a couple of days. He planned everything out. He wrote to Marina in Russian a goodbye note, saying essentially, if I'm caught, the jail is at the end of the bridge. And he wrote down everything she needed to know, the finances, everything. And he went out on a Wednesday when the church services were getting out, with the people around, lots of noise, which could muffle his shot. He took one shot at General Walker, narrowly missing Walker's right temple, and ran. Did the rifle, came home, and was very upset that A, he missed Walker, and that B, he wasn't getting that much media, that much publicity. The Walker shooting was reported, of course, but then it was quickly forgotten, and Oswald has the opportunity, and he missed.
Where did the bullets go? Well, you said he made one attempt?
He did. It looks like it hit the window frame and deflected slightly and into the wall.
Did they recover the slug?
They did, and they didn't put it together until Marina Oswald, I believe in December of '63, admitted to the police that he had shot at General Walker. Then they tested the bullet, tried to compare the bullet. The bullet was severely damaged. But that was an unsolved crime in Dallas. Like I said, shootings like that didn't happen. That was a random act of violence against a prominent political figure, an assassination attempt. Those things, even today, don't happen that much, especially back then.
Were they able to match the bullet up to Oswald's rifle?
As best they could, yes.
Okay. I always wondered how he got the rifle to Walker's place.
Well, Marina Oswald testified that he wore a raincoat, so that he put the rifle underneath his raincoat and then rode the bus to the left field area up to Turtle Creek.
Okay. Okay. Why do you think, Sean, that so many people today, 3 out of 4, believe that he didn't try to shoot Walker or somebody else?
Well, there's lots of things. I think, first of all, people have to get educated. Social media today and the internet is awesome, but it's a double-edged sword. Anybody can say anything about anyone at any time. And especially the Kennedy case, is false. People repeat stories. They repeat, second-hand accounts, third-hand accounts. They need to go to the primary sources. People repeat things they hear, but don't do their own due diligence. Go do your report. Read the official reports. Go talk to witnesses. Look at and witnesses' testimony have changed over time. Go look at their original statements. Go look at what they said to law enforcement at the time. And then use your common sense. A lot of people like to believe, it's so romantic, the odd word to say, to think that, this huge conspiracy, the assassins are still out there, yet to be identified, and, it's a social club. And I hate to put it that way, but people have made friends, and they made money, they sell books, they started businesses, they've gained popularity, social status, and when otherwise they would not have. So I think it's just a combination of factors, but you have to get educated, you have to go back to the primary sources, and you just have to use your own common sense. It makes sense the conspiracy is so big, all of a sudden it would pop up, and then never be seen again? Why? Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, Sean, you mentioned earlier that you worked at the Assassination Research Center, downtown Dallas, with Larry Howard.
Right.
Do you know a fellow by the name of Steve Barber?
I do. In fact, I talked to him today, as a matter of fact.
Cool. Was he work? I know he's worked there. Did you work together with him as a peer?
No, I do not remember Steve there. I would go up, especially on weekends. But once again, I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
Primarily during that time, and then 1 year at community college before I went to Orlando. So it wasn't anything extravagant. Mostly on weekends, a day here, a day there, that kind of thing.
Okay. I know you and I know Steve through a Facebook group called Fair Play for JFK. It's founded by a wonderful individual by the name of Jim Hess. And
He is amazing.
If you want to learn, if you want to make friends, if you want to learn fascinating things about the assassination, go to Fair Play for JFK. What's interesting about that group, it's made up more of conspiracy people than those that believe Oswald shot President Kennedy and had no help, acted alone. So I thought I'd throw that in.
The great thing about Jim Hess and his website, Fair Play for JFK, is that no matter what you say, you must back it up. So if I make a statement and somebody calls me out on it, I must go back and provide a valid source for that, just like any conspiracy theorist. If you say something and someone challenges you, you have to come up with the primary documentation. And that's the way it should be. It's getting rid of the disinformation that's out there that's rampant with this case. And Jim Hess has done a great job. Jim Hess is a lone nutter, like myself. And
what is a lone nutter?
It's a derogatory term, I'm almost saying, those who believe in Lee Harvey Oswald's guilt. Now, I would say this. You can never know everything about a case or a crime. So there could have been a conspiracy. Oswald could have been influenced by somebody in Mexico City. He could have been influenced by anyone. We don't know that. There's no proof of that. There's no credible proof of that. But I don't want to shut that door entirely, because it's entirely possible that he might have been influenced by someone or something. But as far as any second shooters, absolutely not. There's absolutely zero evidence for that. But what motivated Oswald or who motivated Oswald, that's still out there.
Talking with Sean DeGrilla, the author of Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. You can get it on Amazon.com. And give us your website again, Sean.
SeanDeGrilla.com.
And what's your email?
SeanDeGrilla@gmail.com.
Okay. Getting back to Jim Hess's Facebook group, he started it, I think it's pushing 4 years now.
Right.
There's over 1,800 members. Another thing I like that Jim does really well is we got to behave ourselves.
Absolutely.
We got to be gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. It's male and female, and there's no cursing. You can't call each other names because this subject can get out of hand, right, Sean?
It's emotional, absolutely. It's emotional. There are a lot of personal attacks, and people just have to get a grip. Yeah, the case is an amazing case. It's interesting, but the bottom line is it happened 55 years ago. We're all trying. Everyone wants to give their 2 cents worth. Some people take it personally, and I think some people are really out there on both sides of the issue. So it's a place where people have decorum, and you can talk with civility. And if you don't, you get warned. And if you ignore those warnings, you get muted for a couple of days until your behavior changes. And that's the way it should be.
Right. And I imagine if folks do end up joining, they can question you. They can send you messages, they can post questions for you and others. And
on my website, you can email me. There's a link on says contact me. An absolutely good question. Absolutely. I can't respond to everybody. I get a lot of interesting emails saying, they found 4 rifles in Dealey Plaza and a pistol, and Oswald never lived at 1026 North Beckley, and the tramps were, Frank Sturgis and other people, and that kind of stuff. I mean, I can't help you because that's absolutely not true. The tramps, in fact, were documented. In fact, one of the tramps died a couple of years ago, made his way to Florida, and lived near Cocoa Beach and worked for the Public Works Department. And wrote a book called The Making of a Bump. And it's a great book. It's a redeeming account of how he was down and out and how he pulled himself up by the bootstraps and became a productive citizen. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But, some conspiracy folks don't want to hear that. They think it's the Watergate burglars. They think it's Woody Harrelson's dad, and it's irrational, and it's wrong.
Right.
It's uneducated.
Right. Also, we have a mutual friend you're able to visit with, Jim Leavelle.
Oh, yeah.
And also, folks within Sean's book are the Jim Leavelle files.
That's it.
And they've been in a filing cabinet for many, many, many years. Tell us how you're able to meet Jim, please, Sean.
I would know a mutual friend in the Dallas Police Department who took Jim out to lunch every Wednesday. I told him, I said, hey, I want to do a book on Lee Harvey Oswald. Can you get me an in with Jim Leavelle? He goes, absolutely. So my girlfriend and I flew down to Dallas, and we interviewed Jim. My son, let me back up. I think the wrong visit. A mutual friend in the Dallas Police Department. Hold on, Dave. Just a second. You know Jim, who Rick Janik is? Janich.
Say it again, please.
Rick, and his last name is Janich.
Don't know him.
He's a Dallas. You might want to friend him. He's a Dallas police officer. Works with Marie Tippett extensively. A great guy. So, let me go back to your question. I'll throw you out there real quick, but that's a great source to have. Phenomenal guy. So I knew a friend in the Dallas Police Department, and I contacted him, and I said, I'm doing a book on Lee Harvey Oswald. Can you get me in with Jim Leavelle? He goes, absolutely. So I flew my son and I down there, a 10-year-old son, Gibson, and I walk up to his house, and there's Jim Leavelle. Look at the window, and there's Jim Leavelle eating eggs. This is a guy that I've seen on these numerous TV shows and documentaries, and here I am standing in his house. It was amazing, surreal. So Jim was 98 at the time, spent an hour talking to my 10-year-old son. Gibson had some questions for him. He answered them, and I spoke to Jim for a while. Got his personal notes. They weren't written contemporaneously with the assassination, a little bit later, But he had weird hate mail, very bizarre hate mail. He had his own personal notes and his opinions about the assassination and the shooting of Officer Pickett.
Also, like to mention, we have a sister group to Fair Play for JFK, JFK called Friends Who Like Jim Leavelle. And
that's a recent one. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's recent. I think it's about 10 days old. We have 82 members. Sean, you're a member of that group too, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And, you know, and once again, people who disparaged Jim and said he was part of the conspiracy, he turned Oswald at the right moment to get him, you know, a shot in his spleen and liver, all that stuff like that. They have never met Jim. Have never met him. I've never been to his house. I've never sat down on the couch with him and talked to him. Because if you do that research, if you get personal in that research, you're going to realize that's not the case. You're going to realize Jim is a human being, a dedicated cop, and things happen the way they happen, but it's just a happenstance of history.
That's true.
Things happen.
And as I was reading his files, again, within your book, I noticed that Jim's statements are very accurate. His story has never changed, ever has changed. And also, it was interesting to learn that Jim actually saw Ruby trying to flex that pistol again, trying to get more shots off.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
That's interesting.
And that L.C. Gray, you know, L.C. Gray was one of the unsung heroes in this case, because L.C. Gray has put his hand in there and wrapped his hand around Ruby's gun and prevented Ruby from squeezing off more shots. There have been more shot police officers in that basement than it was for L.C. Graves just taking his bear hook, his bear claw, and just wrapping his hand around that cylinder of the revolver, preventing the gun from going off again. Not very many people know that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
On page 269 of your book, which is part of Jim Leavelle's files, he calls Oswald Malcontent. So I was wondering, is that how you got your title?
Nope. No, it was not. It was actually, no. When Oswald was being interviewed, they asked him about his personal views of President Kennedy. And his response started off, was in part, let me start over again. When Oswald was in custody, one of the questions was about Oswald's views of President Kennedy. And part of Oswald's response was, I'm not a malcontent. Well, nobody asked you if you were a malcontent. You just volunteered you're a malcontent when nobody even asked you if you were. So that was one of Oswald's self-betraying behaviors. He said, I'm not a malcontent. Well, we didn't ask you if you were. You just told us you weren't. I think he was very dissatisfied. And it was funny, when I was reading Jim's notes, Jim called him a malcontent. And it was perfect.
Yes.
But even Jim back then got it.
Yep.
Jim knew exactly what he was doing with.
Yes. And Jim also mentions that, as I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that there's overwhelming evidence that Oswald shot President Kennedy and Officer J.D. Tippit. And what is it that Captain French says, Sean? This case is cinched. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, and people think the rush to judge. Well, no, it wasn't. Oswald was the only person acting that way. He was caught with a revolver in his hand. He was the employee missing from the book depository. He was uncooperative. He lied. He tried to kill police officers. These little things put together, yeah, this is your guy. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that these actions and these behaviors and these words are not of an innocent person. I mean, you put all that stuff together, what do you have? A guilty person.
Yes. And that's in your book cover to cover.
It is. One last thing. Well, one thing about, if we go back real quick, Dave, to the PSE with George O'Toole.
Yes.
If people read George O'Toole's book, he has a graph in there, only one chart from Oswald, and it says, I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir. He ran that through the PSE, and he said Oswald was telling the truth. My computer voice stress analysis says, no, he wasn't. He was lying. How do I reconcile that? So I got with Jerry Crotty, who did my voice stress, and I said, hey, can you run this through a PSE machine? And he got back to me and said, the PSE machines no longer work. The styluses aren't, spare parts aren't made anymore. The paper's not made anymore. They're defunct. I said, well, can you run this through the computer voice stress analysis using, go back a minute. I explain this right, because the PSE has two modes, 1 and 2. 1 is for male voices, and 2 is for female voices, because male voices have bass, female voices do not. So what happened was, when Jerry looked at the charts, he saw that George O'Toole slowed down the PSE when he was analyzing Oswald's words to skew the results. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to prove it. Since we couldn't use the PSE machines because they're defunct, I had him run the CVSA at mode 2, and I almost mirrored exactly the results from George O'Toole, meaning that George O'Toole used the wrong mode, the wrong speed, when analyzing Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, why did George do that? So the intentionality is known only to George. But his book is wrong. He said that he analyzed more Oswald charts. None of those are printed. All of my charts, every single one, is printed in my book. I left nothing out.
That's
George
good.
did not do the same. Yeah.
That's
So
good.
George's results are skewed. They're wrong. And he has more witness charts in there. I did not do those because the computer voice stress analysis is very expensive. But if the Oswald chart is skewed, it probably stands to reason that the other charts are skewed in there. So I proved that. And one more thing is George O'Toole only took a 3-day course in the PSE, a 3-day orientation course, and then started going off to his own results. Well, I hired a professional, a man who's retired law enforcement, who created the computer voice stress questions for sex offenders, and works for the man that created the computer voice stress analysis. In fact, he has his own company called Karate Investigations. Very successful. So, either you have a guy that's done, a conspiracy author that has 3-day course in it, or do you have someone who's dedicated a life to this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, plus technology's improved since then, too.
It has, and it has more than a 98% accuracy rate. On my website, there's a tab called CVSA, and it shows the current court cases where the CVSA is allowed. It shows testimonials on where the CVSA has helped or solved criminal cases. It's used by more than 2,500 law enforcement agencies worldwide. I took one for law enforcement employment back in '98. So it's a tool, it's an investigative tool. It works very well, it's very reliable. And I think I've proven in my book that George O'Toole's The Assassination Tapes is wrong, is inaccurate, and that in my book is the true computer voice stress analysis of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Excellent. Excellent. In Jim Leavelle section, it talks about him conducting lineups, and I don't want to give away the endings and so forth, but there are several witnesses that participated in that picked Lee Harvey Oswald out of the lineup.
Right.
And I won't get into all the names in that. We'll let people find out for themselves, because it can lead to...
And there's so much more.
Yeah,
There's so much more that's in the book.
Yeah, it's loaded with information. Like I said, I got 30 years into this mess. I learned things I didn't know before when I read Sean's book. You can find it at SeanDeGrilla.com. You can get it at Amazon.com. It's Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. Sean, how has this book affected your life?
Well, it's my first book that I've written, and it was a sense of personal fulfillment that I had, and actually writing a book, seeing it on my bookshelf, and actually contributing new material to the Kennedy assassination. I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to put my thoughts out there. I was very excited to do that. It's opened up a few more doors. Like I said, I'm writing my second book about Lee Harvey Oswald. My website has various interviews and presentations I've given to the public. And this has been very exciting. It's just been personally fulfilling for me. And I'm very, very, very satisfied with the end result.
What does your girlfriend think of this mess?
Well, she's been supportive. Doesn't quite have the zest or the zeal that I have for the case, but she's been supportive. And as a matter of fact, she was writing a novel, put it down, and then when I started writing my book, it inspired her to pick up the pen and paper and to start writing again. So I hope to have her book see your book in print sometime next year.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And was it difficult in finding a publisher?
Well, it's self-published.
Oh, it is?
To get it is. It's self-published. To get one of those, one of the major publishing houses to grab your book, it probably would have taken a long time, if at all. So I went the self-publishing route. It's a little more difficult. It's not about making money, because I'm not making any on it, and it's not about the publicity. It's just about getting your thoughts out there. It's about the satisfaction of knowing, hey, I've made a tangible effort to set the record straight how I see it, on the Kennedy assassination. So that's my main reason for it, and I'm working hard to publicize it. But in the end, it's out there. That's all I care about.
Yeah, that's good. Sean originally sent me a book a couple months back, and I happened to be in Dallas. I went by to see our friend Jim Leavelle, me with a couple other members of Fair Play for JFK as well. I went to Jim's section, had him sign that area. Somehow between the time I left Jim's house and getting on the plane and traveling back to Las Vegas, the book disappeared. And it broke my heart, but Sean was nice enough to send me another copy, which I appreciate. And I want to mention our groups again. We got Fair Play for JFK. Then we have our newer group, sister to that. It's called Friends of Jim Leavelle. And any subscribers who are interested in this subject, you're more than welcome to join. And you can make friends worldwide, meet great people like I have Sean and others. Name of the book is Sean DeGrilla is the author. Malcontent, Lee Harvey Oswald's Confession by Conduct. Is there anything we're leaving out?
Well, Dave, I think you've really gone through the meat of what's in the book, and I just want to put out there that I'm not regurgitating the same old story, because how many times can you write about the assassination? It's almost inviolate for further research and writing because it's been talked about and written about so much. I publish unpublished photographs in there, things that have never been seen before, documents, that kind of stuff. So I think when you purchase the book, people will be very pleasantly surprised. It's not the typical JFK assassination book. It's not the typical images or documents you would see. It's a lot of new stuff.
It is. It really is. I've learned some things. And there's very few books on the shelves that are written by folks that believe Oswald did it and act alone. And it's
well, not only that, it's law enforcement officers. You have Jesse Curry, you have Mark Furman, and a select others that have written books that are law enforcement officers that have written books about the Kennedy assassination, but they're very few and far between. And cops, if you haven't been a cop before, you can't understand how we look at things. And I think my perspective, my law enforcement experience has given me a unique perspective in this case, one that that's not been researched thoroughly.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a unique angle, too. You had 17 years?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What are you doing nowadays with your life?
Now, I just finished school, my bachelor's. I'm going to start my master's here in January, and I am the security manager for a medical company, and we'll see where life takes me.
That sounds good. And when can we look for your second book?
Hunter of Fascists, The Radicalization of Lee Harvey Oswald will probably be out by the end of next year. We'll see how it goes. That's a tentative date, but as you know, things can change.
Okay, super. Well, Sean, thanks for your time. It's been a real pleasure. And I'm going to put this YouTube video up and see if we can get some folks to watch it and shoot us some questions and comments. So thanks again, and it's a pleasure talking with you, Sean.
Thank you, Dave.